One more thing. Kristaps Porzingis suffers what the Celtics are calling a serious injury. What does that mean for the Mavericks? What changes for the Celtics and the Mavs in the NBA Finals? Talk about all that and more right now.
I'm here because I have to be.
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
That's it. It's me versus the machine. Don't let his lightness take away from his quickness.
You can rest later. You're young.
I never recovered here.
Wait. One more thing.
Yeah, welcome. You are still locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and your best friend covering the Mavs for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. It's the one more thing, the bonus episode for Locked On Mavs. We did the full episode where we talked about what the Mavs need to do. Yesterday, we talked about Kyrie, talked about Luka, turnovers, PJ Washington, all that. So go check out that episode. But today, Kristaps Porzingis suffers an injury. This music is very unfortunate timing for, hey, this guy suffered an injury. Let's play some funk music. Let me play that out. Kristaps Porzingis suffers an injury. We'll talk about how that changes things for the Mavericks. And then Tim Legler on his all NBA, All City podcast with our friend Adam Mares from Locked On Nuggets and DNVR and Locked On NBA. He answered my question about Kyrie, and so I'm going to play that. And he talked about what are the differences between Kyrie scoring when he has 25 to 30 points and when he has these low scoring games like he's had the first couple in the finals. So I thought that was really interesting. So Tim Legler is technically on the show a little later, so hang out with that. But let's start here with the one more thing. Reports come out of practice on Tuesday that Shams Charania reports, everybody's reporting because the Celtics announced it, Kristaps Porzingis suffered a torn retiniculum, a medial retiniculum, allowing a dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon. A lot of medical terms. I do not know what it is. I'm going to need my guys, Brian Suter and Jeff Stotts. They commented on it, so they'll know what they're talking about. But the Celtics say that Kristaps Porzingis is day-to-day for the NBA Finals with what they're calling, quote, a rare injury that is unrelated to his calf strain even. And Joe Mazzulla, the coach of the Celtics, said that this is, quote, a serious injury. And the Celtics medical team will make the decision about Porzingis' availability. Mazzulla said he's doing anything and everything so he can be able to play. Porzingis spoke to the media. He seemed in good spirits, but, he has suffered a lot of injuries, and I feel like it was a similar response from him. But that he talked to the media, I feel like is kind of notable. If he wasn't going to play, I don't know that they would have put him out there, but maybe it's probably required with the NBA because in these finals media availabilities, they just have like 4 different stations going at once, and every player's got to show up for all of them, even some of the like end of the bench type guys. But what is his injury now? So Brian Suter, our friend, he's a sports medical doctor. He's been on the show many times before talking about injuries. He says the medial retiniculum is like a seatbelt that keeps the tendons in place as they course around the inside of the ankle bone. There are 3 tendons that travel along the inside of the ankle, and the seatbelt keeps them secured in place. The posterior tibialis tendon is one of said tendons. So he's basically got, the retiniculum is like holding that all together, and that he's got a torn one of those right now. Jeff Stotts, our friend, he's in street clothes on Twitter, Mavs fan, seen him at a bunch of games. He said the medial retiniculum is a connective tissue that serves as the roof of the torsal tunnel. Think carpal tunnel, but for the foot. That gives me no reference. It anchors multiple structures in place, including the tendon of the posterior tibialis. If the retiniculum is torn, the tendon can shift out of place and dislocate, causing pain and instability of the ankle and foot. He only said Jeff Stotts has this database of all the injuries that have happened in the NBA, basically. He said he only has one real comparison in his database, but it was in conjunction with other traumatic ankle injuries that required surgery and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how this is managed, but given his injury history, there is reason for concern. A lot of stuff there. We can't speculate. The Celtics are calling this day-to-day, but they also called it a serious injury and a rare injury. Jeff Stotts only had one example in his database on it. It seems like that's it seems serious, and it seems like it's not something to mess around with. And so I'm just going to operate under the assumption that he's not playing. That he won't play at least in game 3. But we'll see. If he is going to play, then it sounds like he's going to be limited. And so let's just go the full 9 yards. Let's just say if Porzingis is not available, what does that change for the Celtics, for the Mavs, and all that? So A bunch of things, because Porzingis has been good and he's given them some things, and he gives them something that, we talk about with Maxey all the time, but Porzingis on a much better level. He gives them options and he gives them different looks, and he gives them, you can play Horford and Porzingis together. So they're playing very big. You can play Porzingis the 5 out where he's shooting threes on, on the outside. So that 5 out offense. So you have one less big. The depth there takes a big hit. You go down to, their only other guy that has played really in their rotation that doesn't really take threes is Luke Kornet, and that's their next center. So if they go to that instead of going small, like maybe they will, the Mavs could have the lobs back in those non-Al Horford minutes. The wings and the guards of the Celtics have done a great job of sticking with the roller, of making sure that the Mavs don't get lobs, but it could open up a lot on the inside of the court for the Mavericks if Porzingis is not there. He's gotten a bunch of blocks. He's been very good defending the rim, and that's been huge. He's also been huge pulling the Mavericks bigs away from the rim on defense, and that's something that I think is definitely something that changes. The rim protection of Porzingis, I think if they're without that, then all of a sudden that opens up an avenue for the Mavericks. Porzingis on offense also has been just taking advantage of the Mavs small, especially the first half of game 1. But in other instances too, taking advantage of whenever he gets a switch with Kyrie on him, with Josh Green on him, Hardy on him, Dante Exum, whoever small guy is on him, even Derrick Jones Jr. He's taking advantage of those guys, and the Mavs have had a hard time switching on it. And so if all of a sudden he's out of the picture, you don't have that option to go to anymore. So then it becomes less of a, all right, we've got to solve this. Mavs defense looks at the Celtics and goes, oh my God, we've got to solve 8 problems at once. And if Porzingis is out, then maybe that goes down to 6 problems or 7 problems, 5 problems. Who knows? Yeah, they just have one less option there. And so I think that's absolutely notable if he's going to be out, because they don't have that. It then contains a little bit. And what the Mavericks did against the Clippers, the Thunder, and the Timberwolves, they started to take away some of those options. Okay, Giddey's not going to be able to play anymore. Okay, we're not going to allow we're not going to allow Karl Anthony Towns to do much except for take threes. Okay, we're taking away the rim from Anthony Edwards. Then what happens? The Mavs start taking away things, and all of a sudden it becomes easier to defend a team if you start taking things away. Now, if Porzingis gets taken away due to an unfortunate injury, then that changes it for the Mavericks, and that helps them solve some problems, which will be helpful for the Mavs defense. The Mavs offense too. One less depth. That's something. That's one less big for their depth. I think that's something that's huge. How much do you want to play Al Horford? How much do you want to keep rolling him out there? He's been playing. Let's see how many minutes he's been playing so far, because it feels like they've got a really good balance with all these guys. Horford's been playing 29 minutes. Horford's 38 years old. I'm not sure that you want Horford playing 35, 36, 37 minutes, especially with these two games in Dallas. You only get 1 day off in between the two of them. And so it's interesting. Porzingis had been playing just about 22 minutes. So you completely take that away, give some to Horford, give some to Kornet. It changes a lot for the Mavericks. Kornet does not space the floor. He has been able to shoot in the past. In college, he could shoot. I was talking to Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports about him, and he was like, yeah, I was one of the first people to kind of like see him, and I was like, man, this guy can really shoot. And he was shooting trail threes and all kinds of stuff. So he did in college, but it's not really translated so far, especially in the playoffs. But if Luke Kornet is the guy that comes in and takes some of those minutes, maybe I don't know, 12 minutes, maybe the Celtics go small there. It's just a different thing that the Mavericks haven't seen. And then maybe that opens up the opportunity for the Mavericks to get the lob back, which the Celtics have done a great job taking away. But if the Mavs can get that back, then all of a sudden your offense opens up. Huge thing for the Mavericks if they can open up that. That's something I'm definitely watching. If Porzingis is going to be out with this injury, my dog is upset because of the storm outside. But if Porzingis is going to be out because of this injury, then it opens up a lot for the Mavericks. Changes, and what it does for the Celtics is it puts more pressure on Tatum and Brown. You've got to come up. You've got to come up big now. They have one less option. They have one less guy that can go for 20. They have one less guy that can get his own shot. They have one less guy that can take advantage of a mismatch, and they just hang out on the perimeter while he tries to post up Josh Green or Jaden Hardy or Luka or whoever else. But we'll see. This is not a definite thing. This is not oh my God, he tore his ACL, he's out. Absolutely. They're saying day to day. Now they're also calling it a serious injury. They're calling it a rare injury. He's had other injuries before, obviously. They do say it's unrelated to the calf strain. That's why he missed 38 days in between the first round and the finals. And so we don't know exactly what this means. But if he's going to be out, that's what I think opens up for the Mavericks. And so I'm fascinated to see what happens and if he's going to be out or if he's not. So there you go. Coming up, let's talk about Kyrie Irving and his scoring. Tim Legler answered a question that I asked him about Kyrie and his scoring, and I'm curious what he said about it. So let's talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds that you can use to get in on the action and bet on sports. So go to FanDuel.com and see what's available for you. They got all kinds of stuff. Mavs moved up to minus 2.5 after the Porzingis news, or maybe they're reacting to the money. I'm not 100% sure with that, but they were minus 1.5 last night when I did the episode. Now they're minus 2.5, so that's interesting. Mavs to win the series plus 570, so you bet $100, you could win $570. Celtics are still minus 820. Overwhelming odds. They should win the series, all that. Check out FanDuel. And right now, if you are a new customer at FanDuel, get $200 in bonus bets. So you go in, you place a $5 bet, you win that bet, you get $200 that you can use on anything to win on any other kind of money. So check that out. FanDuel.com/lockedon to win big on your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. The one more thing, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. If somehow you're listening to this before tonight, come join us at Four Corners Brewery in Dallas. We'll have a live show. Slightly Biased will be there. Kevin Gray and Mark Followill will be doing a show too. We'll have a bunch of stuff, a bunch of people hanging out. And just come hang out with us. We'll do some shows. We'll talk some Mavs and all that. So come hang out with us. Four Corners Brewery, 7 p.m. on Tuesday if you're getting to this episode before that happens. Or if it's like 10 p.m., you're like, oh man, I missed it. Just come and see what happens. Come and see what happens. Should be fun. All right, Isaac, let's get into Kyrie Irving. So I talked a lot about Kyrie Irving. I talked a lot about him the last couple of days. And Adam Mares and his team reached out and was like, hey, do you have any questions for Tim Legler? I was like, absolutely. Tim Legler, the Mavs legend? Tim Legler, the one from ESPN, the former NBA player, sharpshooter, that called the Mavericks making the Western Conference Finals before anybody else did, including myself? Absolutely, I'm going to ask Tim Legler a question because he's been on this before anybody. He's been like the for lack of a better term, the white knight for Mavs fans in the national media, where he's been preaching the good news of that this Mavericks team is different and that they're good and their defense is good. And ever since they got PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, even before they played a game, he was on this and said that these guys are different. These two guys will help this team. And man, the Mavericks have proven him right all the way through to the NBA Finals, which I think is completely awesome. So, they asked me that. And what I wanted to hear from him as a former NBA player, former scorer, former, guy that was a really good shooter in the league. What's the difference for Kyrie between the games when he has like 10 points and the games when he has like 25, 30 points? Because it's been a big swing. So far in the playoffs, Kyrie has had, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games of 16 points or less. He's played 19 games total, so 7 games of 16 points or less. He's had 6 games of 30 or more in the playoffs. So think about that. 7 games of 16 or less and 6 games of 30 or more, and then a couple 20-point games in the middle there. So what's the difference between those? A lot of them are against OKC. OKC now in Boston have been the majority of the games where he hasn't had a good scoring game. And so I wanted to ask Tim Legler about it. Here's what he said.
Nick Angstadt of Locked On Mavs, my colleague as well. He asked, what's been the difference for Kyrie in the games he struggled to score and the games he's getting 25 to 30 this playoffs? He has had a little bit of a hot or cold playoffs. Even if you go to previous rounds, when he was playing well, there were games where we were saying, wow, Kyrie's been so good, but he only had 11 points, 12 assists or whatever. So what is the difference between him scoring and not scoring?
Yeah, it's been interesting. He averaged like 26 or something like that in the Clipper series, like 27 in the Minnesota series, but 15 in the Oklahoma City series. Yeah. And you see what he's doing in this series. So you're right. I think he's had now 9 games, something like that, 9 games under 20 points. And, and a bunch of other really good games. So you're right. It's been kind of all over the place a little bit for Kyrie Irving. I think for me, when I notice when he's better, I feel like is he's got the ball earlier in the shot clock, earlier in the possession. Maybe even he's the one that brought it up. He gets into attack quicker before the defense has a chance to kind of react to the initial action. Now it gets swung to him, and they're just so set because they've gone over this, how they're going to close out on him, how they're going to defend him, what the next switch you're going to have to pull off, what's the next rotation against him. When he's got the ball initially, it's a little bit easier to create some chaos, and I think it escaped guys. And I think also just moving without the ball earlier in the clock where they come down, they run some action for him where he comes off a pin down or he sets a back screen, then gets a screen and comes off to the ball where you put him in something first before he catches it, but he's catching it early. In the first 8 seconds of the clock, he's got the ball where now that's like your primary option, and then he goes. He looks unsure right now. He looks unsure. Now, I will say this. I do think they're talking about 18 shots he had contested in game 2. Okay, that's a lot of shots to be contested, but let's go. And if I ran a rip of those shots right now, just one after another, we just watched the video of all 18, you're going to see an awful lot of makeable Kyrie Irving shots.
Yes,
man. I honestly think this is a big part of it. Does he need to change anything, or does he just need to make them?
He needs to make it. Look, it's obviously between his ears right now a little bit. He's, that's like any player. I don't care who you are. You can't. The ball doesn't go in. It's a bad feeling. You start to not be so sure of yourself, and that's what he looks like right now. I think I pointed this out today too. I think there's been a handful of times he's made one move too many. Like he had the initial clearance to shoot, and then he went back into some other thing with his dribble, and now that defender recovered against him, and then the second opportunity wasn't as good. But a lot of these are makeable. By his standards, these are makeable shots. They're not easy shots. They're tougher shots, but they're makeable. He's had some mid-range, especially the mid-range pull-up stuff. These are very makeable shots for Kyrie Irving. So part of it is, yeah, man, he's just too good to keep missing some of these makeable shots. And if that happens in the beginning of the game, he could potentially unlock something and feel entirely different for the night. So I think his best games have been games in which he started quickly in the first 6 minutes. He had a few baskets. And I think that's going to be his intent, and probably the intent of the Mavericks is going to be to do that, to get him going, maybe more so than Luka trying to figure out things for himself early in the game. Let's see if Kyrie can get going a little bit. Luka knows he can get his whenever he wants. He needs to have some other guys feel in the flow and included in what they're doing. And right now, there hasn't been enough of it. Not just Kyrie, it's other guys too.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right on all fronts. The fact that he can see, and the fact that, Kyrie Irving has had issues getting going early. Like in the regular season, he would just score 4 points in the first half. And then he would go on this run in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. And maybe he can't do that in this. Maybe he's got to get going a little bit more. Maybe he's got to get into a rhythm earlier in the game. But Tim Legler and Adam are completely right about the fact that I went through, and on the episode last night, I said almost word for word what they just said. He's getting these makeable shots for him. These are not abnormal Kyrie contested. Oh my God, how could he possibly make that shot? There's a couple here and there, obviously, but there's a bunch of wide open shots that Kyrie Irving is just missing. And so Kyrie mentioned today at practice, I told Luka, I've just got to be better. I've got to step up, and I'm the one that's holding us back. And that whole thing, he's taking responsibility for it, which is great and good to hear. But now you got to go do it, because this game 3 is basically a must win for the Mavericks. So you go down 0-3. There's no one's ever come back. So he's got to come out. Maybe he's got to get his shot going a little early. But man, it feels like he won't have 3 games like that, right? We've said maybe he won't have 2 games like that, but then he did. So, but man, it does seem like he's getting these makeable shots. I went through and watched each one of them, like they said in the video, and it seems like he should be able to make some of these. And so maybe not having the Boston crowd, being back at home, knowing what's at stake, seeing what's in front of him, all that, getting a rhythm and figuring out, all right, where do I need to get my shots? How can I pull them up against this? Maybe not having Porzingis either, not one less long defender, solves one of those problems for him. It's interesting. I'm curious to see how Kyrie Irving approaches this game and to see how it is. But man, it does seem like he will eventually just make some of these shots, because he is getting makeable shots. The Mavs are setting screens for him to attack somebody else besides Derek White, but he's driving at Derek White and he's getting open shots. And he's getting makeable Kyrie shots. He's just got to be better. That's really been the big difference for the Mavericks in this. There you go. Again, if you're going to hang out with us at Four Corners Brewery, see you tonight, Tuesday at 7 p.m. we will be there and hanging out with you guys, doing a show with Slightly Biased, Kevin Gray, Mark Falwell. I think Reggie's supposed to show up. I messaged everybody that I could think of to come and hang out. So everybody's absolutely welcome. Guys, thanks for hanging out here with me on Locked On Mavs. We'll be back with more. We'll have Slightly Biased and me on the post-game show for Wednesday. Dana Larson's coming back. I think I'll do another thing with John Corrales, even though you guys will probably scream at me for doing it, but I'm going to do it. Guys, thanks for listening to Locked On Mavs. Peace out.